Surprised when I approached Rhonda about the Super Mario Brothers themed porn shop business idea.
Now, here's Mike Andreula.
What's happening, everybody? It's your man, Michael Andreula, with another exciting podcast with Dr. AnnMarie, famous mother of Ronda Rousey, won an Olympic gold medal in judo. She currently is creating children's games through teaching mathematics, and she just does about everything. She donates her time. She's helping raise another generation. She's here to teach us principles, how to live a successful life, how to be happy in life, and how do we add to this world. And she's doing that in a major way. We also talk about Rhonda's upcoming fight. We talk about her experience with Joe Rogan. I hopefully cleared up a couple things. You know I love you, Joe, and I can understand where she's coming from that incident. So we're going to talk about the games. We're going to talk about how we as listeners can help other people and help ourselves actually learn mathematics and help children learn mathematics. And we're going to talk about the overall principles that apply to mathematics, judo, and life, because they do. And her blog is absolutely fantastic. Link will be below. Enjoy it, guys. Subscribe, like it, keep sharing this thing. We love you guys out there. Keep listening, keep pushing us. We're at the top of the Stitcher chart, and we're moving up in the iTunes, so I really appreciate this. Let's keep on showing the love later. You were calling the headquarters.
Well, actually, no, I came from the headquarters back to my home office just to talk to you.
I really appreciate that, because we love you on this show. The conversations really motivated us, and the latest blog entries you've been doing are absolutely on fire. On top of that, let me just tell you all the good things you've been doing.
All righty, tell me.
7 generation games. The new layout of the website is fantastic.
Thank you.
And it's moving to, like, the games still visually look good when it started, but now they're really, really getting more and more intricate. So I guess you guys have been really pushing on this game.
We have, and I can't wait till you see. We've got a couple of major new things we did. First of all, the beginning parts of it, we've made those from 2D to 3D, so they'll be coming out. And then we have this new game, Fish Lake, that is third person, so you have a little avatar that you can move around the world. So we've got 2 really big things coming out in the desktop games starting in the next few weeks. And then we also have a web-based game we're working on and an iPad game. Those won't be out for a few months.
So the iPad's going to be a game changer, but I'm guessing, so what about kids? Have you been, obviously you've been testing it out on different children. Have you seen any, are you collecting any data?
We are, and it's good and bad. I mean, a really big concern. I work with a lot of the Silicon Valley types, right? So people who are programmers and people who are, went to Ivy League schools, they might have dropped out of them, but they got into Stanford. And you know what? That's not the majority of the population. There's a ton of people out there that say are going to community college and would like to take some classes that actually count for college credit and do okay on that placement exam. There are people who are applying for jobs and they have some kind of basic screening test, but you haven't had fractions since you were in the 6th grade, which was a long time ago. So we're designing games for those people, and we recently collected data on over 300 students in 4th through 7th grade. And what we found is, I think the average test score is 22% on a test of fractions. And so when people say, what grade level is it at? Actually, we picked that because that's a part where a lot of people kind of got bogged down in math. And so
I'm thinking myself, when I actually played the game, it was a good jump. I had to rethink about fractions.
Yeah, so the data that we're getting right at this point, for pre-test before people play the game, has really been a little bit shocking to me. Though when I talk to the superintendents of schools at some places, they're not surprised at all. And I talked to a friend of mine who teaches, and he said that he's had 7th and 8th graders that they don't remember how to multiply fractions, they don't remember how to divide fractions, and you can't assume when you go to college that's never going to come up. Or like I said, if you're working in a retail environment, you have to divide up lots. So the data we're collecting as far as the need, what we're moving towards is making more teen and adult focused games, because the truth is there's just an enormous number of people out there who struggled with math and gave up on it. And so we're trying to reach out to them and do what we call smart games. And somebody said to me, well, don't you think that's a little ambiguous? And I said, no, I don't think it is. I mean, a lot of people want to be smarter. Nobody wants to go back to 5th grade. So instead of saying we're doing fifth grade math, I mean, it's kind of silly. Fractions in something you did in fifth grade and then you never came up again in your entire life. If you're out with a bunch of people and you say, well, there's some people, I know not everybody, but some people go out and you like split the bill, we're going to split among 7 people and you figure out what your share is. I'm just kind of laughing because I know Rhonda hangs out with a lot of Armenians, and that seems to be a real Armenian thing that you pay the bill and you don't let anybody else pay it.
They fight over it. It's
like
a physical fist fight.
Well, no fist fights, but so nobody's splitting the bill. No, I'm paying it. But there are situations where you have to divide things up if you're working with a company. I mean, our company, there are 3 partners, 3 co-founders, so you have to be able to divide things by thirds. So it's not, people talk about 5th grade math, 7th grade math. It's not that you learn that math in 7th grade and you never use it again. And what happens too is maybe you don't use it for years and then you end up in a position where you need to. And I've had a couple of friends recently that were applying for jobs that, civil service types of jobs where they didn't get them. And they didn't get them because they couldn't pass the, this basic test. So the data we're finding is there's a huge need, not just in school kids, but in people who've been out of school for years. So trying to make something that's a really fun game to play and also helps your math skills, maybe also gives you a little knowledge of history and we're looking down the line at expanding in some other areas. So yeah, I could talk about this all day. I really
it is good.
I'm very jazzed about it.
Because it's like the Luminosity where the adult games, but where you can actually, in my opinion, you can go deeper and the graphics are better. Right. And being scared of numbers, which a lot of people they're terrified of numbers. It affects so many different areas of your life, from just all that you have to deal with the government, do taxes, and then you start being so scared of the numbers, it doesn't help. And of course, if you're 16, 35, 5, you want to get involved and do it in an entertaining way. So for me, video games are fantastic, and you combined it with math, and you combined it with video games that I like, where you're hunting, you're like back in hunter and gatherer days. I love it.
And the next one coming out too, there are a lot of ideas from the players of our last games, like, oh, you have that river there. I would like to be able to canoe down that river. And so we've got canoeing in it. We have to avoid the rocks. You should be able to fish in that. So it's like, yeah, we could put fish in it. So a lot of the ideas come from the people that played our last game. But, you were talking about, I don't want to pick on any particular set of games, but there are these games out there that say they stretch your brain, they make you smart or whatever. But truly, you don't have any job tasks that I can think of where you want to move a lot of little boxes around. But you do have job tasks where it's like, can you divide, 48 by 7 and come out with the remainder? And whether you're doing programming or, like you said, doing your taxes, that stuff comes up. So a lot of games claim to be smart games. And they use a bunch of buzzwords. Oh, and it's neuroscience, plasticity, and it was invented by a couple of PhDs. Well, I have a PhD. Dennis went to UCLA for his doctorate in physics, so he actually left after he finished his comps and went to work full-time. But we don't just say, we'll throw out a bunch of words about neuroscience, plasticity, neuropsychiatric institute, and say, this helps your brain. At the end of it, you could see that before this, I was not real clear on multiplying fractions or adding fractions or what what a standard deviation was, and now I get it.
Yeah. When they do that standard sales pitch, credibility indicators, random bar chart that leads to nowhere. Of course it's bullshit.
I should do that one time just for fun. Just here's a chart. Here's another chart.
Like, oh, wow, look at that infographic. I can't argue with that.
Yeah. They have a chart. It must be true.
And it's cool because the last time we talked, I was hitting you with ideas where, we were getting in other technologies, and it was kind of, you must have had a lot more designers come on board because we're talking about getting in on the iPad. And I think as technology moves along, and you guys are moving along fairly quickly, we're going to have this, opportunity where they can play it maybe all over their phones.
Right. We have that in progress right now. In fact, we are doing our very first iPad game. It also runs on the iPhone. So I have my iPhone 6 here. It's on there. Yeah. And we're just building the very first level of that. And on the other end, we're also building some things that are going to be web apps that you'll also be able to play on your phone, on your computer, on your iPad, because the games we have now, as you've seen, they're pretty high quality, high resolution graphics in a virtual world, running, jumping, climbing trees. And if you have a Chromebook or if you don't have the best internet connection, sometimes those are really slow and difficult to play. And so we also are working on the very, I don't want to say simplest, but the lower end where no matter what device you have, it'll play, it'll run. So we're working on both of those at the same time. The other thing we're doing is really cool, and I hung up on her to talk to you, so I feel important. We're trying to make the web app games. I call them web apps. Like I said, they'll play on everything. That's why they're called that. They'll play on anything that runs a web browser. And we're trying to make those as accessible as possible to visually impaired children. Because I have a really good friend, Tina, who was in the Paralympics. She's been blind since she was about 13, and she gives me the riot act every now and then if there's something on our website that isn't accessible. And she says to me, these games you make are not accessible because they're, like I said, you're using the arrow keys and the mouse to move around, and if you're blind, you can't really see it. So some pieces of our games are accessible. Like we have a tic-tac-toe with snares and rabbits. If you get it right, then you get a rabbit, and if you get it wrong, you get an empty snare. And there's a little movie that plays about how the Ojibwe, when they were moved to the reservation, there weren't enough deer, there wasn't enough for the people to live in, so they snared rabbits, and that's the only way they survived during the Depression. And so then you play this tic-tac-toe game, and so that's completely accessible.
Yes.
So Tina and I have been working together from the beginning on our next games, and like I said, the iPad one with the touch part is not going to be able to be modified to be accessible, but we said, well, how about if from the very beginning we looked at, instead of doing like an image map, like click on this image, do it as a table or some separate images put together, so then the screen will read, that's the woods, that's the stream. So to the children who are not blind, or to the adults who aren't blind, it won't look any different. Mm-hmm. But it'll be readable by screen readers. So that's the other cool thing, is we're making the next games that's coming out that I'm working on are going to be, we hope, completely accessible to blind people, but equally, it'll be what we call universal design. So if you're not blind, you won't even notice the difference. It's the back end part that's different. So it's kind of like the sense in that, those curb cuts, when you go up the curb, they were mostly put there so people in wheelchairs could get up the curb. But if you are an older person using a walker, if you're a mom that's got a kid in a stroller, they're still useful. So the new games we're designing, they'll be usable by everybody, but they will also, in the back of it, be completely accessible to people who are visually impaired. So I'm always thinking.
Which is pretty much runs with your good segue here. If you go to drannmarie.blogspot.com, which is one of my favorite well-written blogs, you talk about how you don't just run the Gompers. Like, you're not trying to find the next Rhonda. You're not just burning out little kids and saying, "Oh, you're not the one," which a lot of places probably would do if they're, especially maybe striking sports. You're looking at all of them. You want to improve everyone's life. Everybody that is participating in the program, your job is to use this to teach them how to have a successful life. And just like your game, you're not leaving anyone out. Whoever comes to the table, we're going to take care of you. Which I just want to applaud you again.
Well, one of the people I really admire in life is Father Greg Boyle. He is the guy who founded Homeboy Industries in LA. And he said he found that a lot of the people who were in the gangs, they came out of jail and they had no job, no way to make money. And so they went back into the gangs. And so he couldn't find anybody to hire him. So he's a priest. I mean, he's a Catholic priest. He started a company. They employed these young people, and now they have the Homeboy Bakery. They're in a couple of the airports. They have Homeboy Industries makes T-shirts. They've got the Homegirl Cafe. So I heard him speak at a conference one time, and people asked him, how do you justify spending all your efforts on basically helping these bad kids? And he said that he tries to help everybody because God made them, and obviously he thought they were worth making, so who am I to judge? And I just think that attitude of, some people are worth trying to help and mentor and help them be successful academically and in math and in school and in employment, and other people aren't worth bothering with. That, the old educate the best and the hell with the rest approach, that doesn't appeal to me in judo. It doesn't appeal to me in school. It doesn't appeal to me in anything.
Wow. I'm guessing that where did that conviction come from? That core belief, was it just the way it was internally you felt throughout your life, or?
I think that's a really good question. I guess that's why you have this job. Right?
Okay, well,
that's why you have a podcast. I think a big part of it is I've been I've been fairly successful in life, and I've been very fortunate in that there were a lot of people who helped me out along the way that had no reason to do that. There was nothing they were going to get back from me. They just did it out of the goodness of their heart. And what can you do to show your appreciation for that? And it's funny where, I think it was Thoreau who was in jail for some act of civil disobedience, and one of his friends came and asked him, "What are you doing? What are you doing in there?" And he said, "Well, the bigger question is, what are you doing out there?" And so I would say, what I always wonder is why other people don't feel that way. Because I see plenty of people, whether they've been very successful in judo or they've been very successful academically, they've been very successful financially. And it's sort of like, somebody had a term for it, but basically I got mine, screw everybody else,
Yes.
And I don't get that. And people say, well, I worked hard for this. Yes, you probably did. But you know what? That single mom who's working 3 minimum wage jobs, she's working real hard too. And she doesn't have jack shit. So it's not just working hard. Along the way, you got advantages. I got a scholarship to a private high school, and that helped me get a great education. And then I took the PSATs, and I got a scholarship to an excellent private university, Washington University in St. Louis. I think their tuition's over $50,000 a year now. So yeah, I worked really hard and I studied really hard, but if I hadn't got that scholarship, I wouldn't be where I am. And I can say that for judo. There's a gentleman that passed away a few years ago, Frank Fullerton, and another guy, Bruce Toops, who's in his probably about 70 now. And both of them just wrote checks out of their personal bank account to pay for me to go to Europe and compete and train because they thought I could win a gold medal for the U.S. And I trained really hard. I was at practice 3 times a day. But if they hadn't helped me, I think everybody who's successful has it. Nobody did it alone. I just don't believe it. And so my question is more, why other people don't feel that way? Why do you just think, well, I'm going to go spend all my money on, cheap whiskey and expensive women, or expensive women and cheap whiskey, and not help anybody else? I don't get that.
There's entire industries and book columns where that is basically the primary.
Yeah, fuck you. I got mine.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't get it.
It's good. You don't hear this view that often, especially from let's say self-improvement authors. You read some of the books, you're like, wow, I hope this person doesn't take over the world, because they really are saying, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps, which I know you need to do to a certain extent. But like you said, if you're a single mother, you have 3 children, and a bunch of situations have compounded financial problems, you're going to be able to just hold on to that and try to have the best life you can. And obviously, a lot of principles that you guys do. I saw you on the blog, you did some family games even. Was that a tradition you started recently, or is this something that's been going on?
Oh, at the shower? The baby shower?
Was it a baby shower? You're blindfolding people? Okay. Is it playing games and family interaction, how important is that to having a successful life?
I can't really compare because I have 4 children. I had my oldest when I was 24. She was born a few weeks after my 24th birthday. So I could just say, for me, there aren't a whole lot of things I know beyond a shadow of a doubt. When you get older, you're less sure that you know everything. When you're 17, boy, you're smarter than God and you know everything. But for me personally, I can say unequivocally that my children were more worth than they were trouble. And I'm the kind of person, as you might guess, I have a PhD, I have a World Championships, I started a few companies. So I'm always, always, always working. And it's been very good for me to have a family because my kids pull me out of that.
Sure.
And so I do think it's important I think that a lot of startups, they want young people without children because they think you can live down at the office. Well, I spend a whole lot of time at my office, but I think it's a lot better for you if you pull some time out And, it's funny because I make games because I'm not that playful of a person, but I have my kids play them. Mm-hmm. So, Rhonda was really into gaming. In fact, that's on her Christmas list, Pokemon games and all that stuff that she wants, and she's 27. Julia, my youngest one, will play our games, but she's the kid's voice in some of them and say, well, you should do this, or, these stakes are stupid. There's too many of them. I can't get through them. So I think just having some time with your family is super important, and it makes you less stressed about things, because if this company all falls apart and nobody ever buys another game, I will still have my kids. I will still be able to pick up and go on. So I think balance is super important, and just having fun. A family isn't it's not a corporation.
Sure.
So we do really dumb things. Every year we do the stupidest Christmas present award. So everybody tries to get the dumbest Christmas present. My daughter Jennifer wins every year, so we're just like all out to beat her. Last year she gave Julia a jar with a pickled lizard foot in it, and she gave Rhonda an emergency mustache kit with a pack of little mustaches that you could put on in case of an emergency where you needed mustaches.
Well, I'll try to tweet out something if I get an idea. I switch up gears just a little bit because these are some questions. How closely do you follow MMA?
To be truthful, not very much. I follow Rhonda. Anybody who might fight Rhonda, and Rhonda's friends.
Okay. So there was a conversation. Obviously, who Joe Rogan is.
Yeah, because my children will never let me forget. He was in the middle of a podcast once, and I interrupted him to ask if I could use his laptop to plug my iPhone in to charge it. Well, so that's how I knew who he was. They're like, you just interrupted Joe Rogan's podcast. And I'm like, I needed to charge my phone because I didn't know where Julia was, and I was worried about her. And Julia is far more important than Joe Rogan, though he seems like a nice enough man.
Wait, this was actually you interrupted Joe Rogan during his podcast with Rhonda?
No, he was we were at a fight. He was like in the front row thing, and they had all the immediate people in the front row, and so he had a laptop, and I wanted to plug my phone in to charge it because it had died, and I didn't know where my little Julia was, and I was worried about her. My children like, that's Joe Rogan. I never know who anybody is. When Rhonda did that after party thing, and Terry Allouste, who is the lead singer from Great White, he sang there, bless his heart, for free as one of the people in the entertainment. And I met him because I was teaching judo, and there's this adorable little girl, and I was showing her some stuff, and he comes over and he says, I hear about all the charity you do. That's so great. You ever want me to help you out? Let me know. And he leaves, and then so he says, do you know who that was? And I said, obviously, it was that little girl's daddy. So now I never know who anybody is. Sorry, I went off on a tangent.
Well, you would like him because he does, from early on, he supported Rhonda big time. And he was having a conversation with a heavyweight fighter, Brendan Schaub. I'm sure Rhonda would know all these names, but it wasn't really about MMA. It was after he had just lost to somebody that's currently training at Rhonda's gym with Edmund Travis Brown, and the conversation came up with Joe Rogan in a very honest way. Brendan, maybe you should possibly think about retirement because of the amount of damage you've taken over a period of time. And luckily for Rhonda, she supplies the damage. But do you ever think about those situations, even with Rhonda? When do you call it quits physically? When did you do it with judo?
Well, I was on my last legs, literally, when I was competing. I had 6 knee operations during the years I was competing. They didn't have things like orthoscopes that for the first couple, so they just sliced my leg open and pulled parts out. And then I did have a few scopes. I had a few other things done. And a few years ago, I had a complete knee replacement. So towards the end there, I was one unlucky shot away from being done and not being able to walk again. So I could bear, and I hurt my knee when I was 17. So I tore the ACL. I tore the, actually, I don't think I tore 2 of the ligaments and ripped up all my cartilage and had none in it and competed that way for years and years. And so by the end, that's why I got so good at mat work. So for me, I was going to the Worlds, and win or lose, I was done because they told me, keep this up, you're not going to be walking. And in fact, if surgery hadn't gotten so much better, I wouldn't be walking. So in my case, it was decided for me pretty much.
What are your thoughts on how the problem with the brain injury, if you're taking a lot of head trauma, now you're in a situation, and obviously you're in a situation where how many shots have been too many, you won't know until it's too late. But obviously the good thing is Rhonda rarely takes any punishment.
Right. Well, I think in her case, there's a couple things. One is you're tempting fate every time you go into a combat sport. I can't tell you the number of people I know who got hurt just in freak accident things, that they were working out on the mat and their leg was this way and somebody working out, on the other side of the mat got thrown and landed on them. And they call them freak accidents because they happen one time out of 1,000. But if you go 1,000 times and then 10,000 times to work out, the odds are eventually it's going to catch up with you. So it's a concern. And with her, that's the thing I worry about more than, is somebody going to punch her in the head, that it'll just be some freak little thing that she steps wrong or somebody steps into her wrong. And the more times you go into a cage, whether it's practice or whether it's a match or in judo, the same thing, the more likely you are to have a serious injury. So I think, nobody retires from MMA at 65. So there's going to come a point when she realizes that this isn't fun anymore. I think, and I think when that happens, and the smart people stop then, and the dumb people or the unfortunate people don't, because they have nothing else to do. They either need the money, or they don't have a backup plan. They don't have anything else they've ever done in their life. So I think I won the world, and I was done, and I knew it. I think when Rhonda, got a bronze in her last Olympics, I think she knew it at the time, but she didn't really admit it to herself because she didn't have a backup, anything else.
Well, I think that is exactly the correct, and because you just can't pay for it long term. Hopefully that didn't touch any not nerves, but I didn't know, you might have had that conversation with her at some point, or you might have to. But
well, no, we had a conversation a couple of times before her last two fights, and yeah, in fact, Joe Rogan, he was that guy in the octagon I wanted to punch in the face. Yes.
Why?
Because after her last fight, he's the one that said, you're going to fight in 6 weeks. And I was like, oh, hell no.
But the true story officially after that was through the booth, they were saying it, saying, ask her this. And he's like, you sure? That's what his story was. And he is an extremely honest person. I don't believe that was his fault. I mean,
well, and I think also you're in situations where, you don't have 15 minutes to think about something too. But no, the reason is because she had knee surgery, after she had her knee cleaned up, she had her hand stitched up. She had both of those injuries before the last 3 fights. And every time she was going to, and like I said, she was like one step away. This is why I drink so much at those fights. She was like one step away from somebody hitting it the wrong way and getting injured. And I said, you need to go and have that fixed. You need to go and, but I got another fight scheduled. I said, you're crazy. And then she's like, you need to go and have that fixed. So I had actually called and made her those appointments a couple of times to have those things fixed. And did she cancel them because she had another fight? And then after that, I was just like, oh, hell no. I will beat you myself.
and she's... Listen, it's amazing that she took that many fights with that many injuries, but that's the mindset that she has, and that's the problem, because when you have that particular mindset, it's hard to admit that I'm injured now. But
I mean, she's back to 110%. So yeah, I mean, that was her fight injured the last 3 fights. Though one of my friends who gambles says, don't be so selfish and say that, because then it makes it hard for me to get good odds on her. Say that she's, her left foot's falling off or something.
Yeah, really. No.
But yeah, you can, like I said, that's tempting fate. You can only fight with those injuries so many times until they get worse, which is why when she smacked Alexis Davis, that hard hand bust open, because she should have gotten that checked before, and she knew she needed to before the last 2 fights. And so anyway, this was a big argument that we had. And
you must have been happy when you saw that hip toss, though.
Oh.
And that last fight. I mean,
what I told her is if you had thrown her and armbarred her like I told you, your hand would have busted open, so you should listen to your mother.
Yeah, you're right.
And she said, you're the only person in the world that if you win a world title in 16 seconds, you say you could have done it better than that.
That was pretty impressive. She's just fantastic, and I think she's got a great challenger coming up. Obviously, I would bet the house on Rhonda all the time. Doing fantastic things. Obviously, the game's been fantastic. One thing I wanted to clear up, though, when I was reading the blog, and then I'm guessing this referred to myself. Actually, I was surprised when I approached Rhonda about the Super Mario Brothers themed porn shop business idea. I knew that's. I think I know what I'm talking about. That's a business there. I was reading that. Very funny and so true. If you take money from Rhonda, like everybody in the entourage, you're just gonna have yes people around you. Anybody listening to this, watching this, needs to obviously go to the blog and read these articles. I call them articles. The way you format everything, the way you even change the fonts keeps my dyslexic mind focused. And you're talking about how you can't just take money from somebody and then be able to have an honest conversation with them or give them the honest answers, which leads us back to what we just talked about, Rhonda.
Yeah, well, like we have a company that makes games, and we're always looking for investors, and because the games are educational, because they do help you learn. We're always looking for people to donate copies of games that we can give to schools, because we have artists and we have a sound engineer, we have people that developers. I mean, Dennis and I do the development, but we have another developer. We have people that have to be paid, and so then people say, well, why don't you just go get money from your daughter? And it's like, well, Rhonda does a lot. She contributes a lot of money to charity. In fact, her accountant just texted me, emailed me the other day about, checks that he was writing to charities before the end of the year. Just because she doesn't go running around and tell everybody about it doesn't mean she doesn't do it. And that idea that, well, just go have her give money, I don't know, it just seems like a bad idea in so many ways. And one of them is, like you said, that there are points when I need to say to her, look, you cannot compete again until you get those things fixed up, because those little nagging injuries can turn into major chronic injuries if you don't take care of them. And somebody needs to say that and not be thinking, well, she doesn't fight. Where am I going to get the money to pay the mortgage on my house that she got me? Or where am I going to get the money to, pay for my new car I just got? And so it's far better if she takes, and the other thing too is, and you probably, I'm sure you know this, whether you're an entertainer, whether you're an athlete, you never know how long the run is going to last. And with entertainers, like somebody who's in media, you maybe have a longer possible timeline, where for athletes, it's not going to be, like I said, nobody's retiring from the UFC at 65. So she's got to be smart and sock money away into her, in retirement account and stuff like that, because she's doing well now, but she's 27 and that money's got to last her till she is 95.
People never do. That's why you need to go to 7th-generation games, because you might be in a situation, obviously you're not going to learn the tax implications, but when you just, people think you just take $1 million, stick it in your pocket, and that's going to just last somehow forever. It's going to compound in the bank. It doesn't. And quickly you probably look at it and say, let's span this over 80 years and see how much that is. So it's incredibly important for her to be conservative or be smart about it. And obviously with a mother like you, she can't not. And there's probably a lot of people that are in the exact opposite camp.
Well, I was just shocked reading about some of these athletes that their parents took their money. And like that one hockey player, not only did his parents spend all his money, but then they took out loans against his future earnings. I just can't even imagine that. How could you do that?
That's some demon parents right there. I mean, you really gotta worry about people running around and thinking that's okay, and over a period of time, they're like, maybe they think they're going to double it up.
Well, and then that guy, I mean, he must be such a good kid, because he was saying that they're saying, well, it looked like predatory lending practices, but then, he didn't want to challenge because he didn't want to sue his parents. Man, if my parents spent all of my money and took out loans against my future earnings, I don't know that I would be too reluctant to sue them. I mean, that sounds pretty crazy that you would sue your parents, but it also sounds pretty crazy that your parents would spend all your money and take out loans against your future earnings. And like I said, that football player who had to get a restraining order against his family because they were always coming back and, oh, you have to buy me a $300,000 house, but I need a $600,000 house. I mean, who does that? But apparently lots of people do.
Yeah, I think you would be definitely breaking a lot of arms.
See, that's why everybody should buy the games, because Rhonda's not paying my bills. I have to pay them myself.
Yeah, listen, it's...
and they're cool, and they're fun. And they will make you smarter.
You have to, if you believe in the cause. For me, I have the game, but I donate, and I plan on donating again for the end of this year. It's a charity. A lot of charities, I feel like you can't. Not that I look at this as a charity, but it is a donation to help somebody.
Right.
So donating, it's only $99 to do a whole classroom license. You can simply do a $9.99 for a one student license, but obviously it's better to donate the classroom, and it's going directly to the development of our next generation.
Right, and you can look on the website and see, the different schools we go to that get the games. Somebody asked me why we don't put more of the kids' pictures on there, the kids playing and testimonials with kids, and that's because we're in public schools, and often schools are very cautious, rightfully so, about having kids' pictures on the web, and without maybe their parents don't give permission, maybe God forbid there's some creepy people out there. So we have testimonies with teachers. We'll have pictures of the classroom without the kids in it. Occasionally I'll have pictures of a student whose parents gave me permission. But we do go to the schools and install the games if they have problems with that, or we just send them a link to install it. And we do go and visit a lot of them. We collect data on how well their students are doing. And one of the cool things we're doing now is we're doing a pre and post test, which we did the last couple years also. So we test everybody at the beginning, and then they play the games for 8 weeks, and then we test them again, and we compare how the kids who played the games did with the kids who didn't. And we also can look at how much you played the game and how much you improved. So yeah, we're just all into math over here.
Listen, because I will do an intro and a nice write-up before this, because you've mentioned this in the blog, but you've lived so many different lives. You're just like winning the belt. I mean, the gold in judo is almost so far out of your mind now. You're just focused on a task at hand and moving forward. I really look up to that. It's almost overwhelming how much you accomplish. I don't know if you appreciate that.
Well, it's funny. People say, "Whoa, why didn't you talk about having won the World Championships more often?" Or I can't believe you went off to do this other stuff. But I mean, that was when I was 26. That was 30 years ago. I mean, how pathetic would that be if the peak of my life was 30 years ago and it was just all downhill from there? How sad would that be?
Well, your daughters in 30 years they're going to be ruling the world.
I hope so.
Governor, president, maybe one day.
I could see Julie being president. I tell you what, or Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. That kid can argue.
All right, let's do that. So what can, do you have any, I don't want to keep you forever, but is there anything you want to, wait, one question. Rhonda's fighting in actually a couple weeks, is she not?
No, she's fighting February 28th. She was going to fight January 3rd, and then they needed to reschedule the fight. So she's fighting February 28th in LA at the Staples Center. Wow. Yeah, so it'll be really nice because it's only her second time that she's fought here.
And it's easy commute for you. You don't have to go to Brazil.
Yeah, or Las Vegas. I'm sure I've got one of like the ultra, frequent flyer passes through the casinos in Las Vegas, and for all the times I've stayed there, and I don't even gamble that much. I don't really gamble at all.
Well, so that's okay. That's a little bit further away. Then you need to. You don't have to worry about that now. How can we be extremely successful? Just anybody listening to this, maybe they're in the bottom point of their life, or they're doing well. What are your plans? Do you have a certain game plan or a certain tack plan that you just implement every single day to make sure that 2015 is even better than 2014?
It's funny. I was just talking about that in our office today, and I even wrote about it in my 7 Generation Games blog. The biggest thing I think is I figure out what's the most important thing for me to do that day, and I do that first. Like right now, I'm making these games, and the most important thing for me to do is work in these games. So I may not be able to spend all day doing it, but every day I get up and I work on the next game that's coming up for an hour. Write code for that, work on the graphics for that. So figure out what's the most important thing you need to do and do that first. Now, if, like you said, if you're a single mom, maybe you have to get your kids off to school first, you have to give them breakfast, you have to do this, but then the very first second, you sit down and you do that. So you shouldn't be awake for more than an hour. When I was competing, when I woke up, the second I got out of bed, my feet touched the floor. I did 50 push-ups. I did 50 sit-ups. I did 50 leg lifts. And the reason I did it is because I figured, all right, in the first minute and a half that the day started, I'm already ahead of my competition. So figure out what it is that is most important. Do that first. The other thing is you want to get around the right people, and that's always difficult because all those people everybody wants to be around. But people who are telling you can't do stuff, people who are putting you down, they have to go. Unless they're actually your own child, in which case you raise them, it's your fault, and try and make them better. But I think you have to have people who will support you. And if you really, and here's a brilliant thing too. See, no wonder my mom liked you so well as an interviewer.
I'm going to send an autographed picture to your mom.
So my late husband said something. We were dating years ago, and he was quite a bit older than me. And so he is, pretty successful in management. I was just this young engineer. And I asked him, Ron, what do you think it is that makes somebody a good manager? What is it that makes somebody successful in management? And he said, a successful manager is somebody who sees what needs to be done and then does it. And I said, well, that's kind of redundant. Don't you think? Like anybody who saw what needed to be done would do it. And he just kind of shook his head at how naive I was. And the older I get, the more truth I realize there is to that many people know what needs to be done, but they don't do it. Like I was talking to somebody many years ago who said, I want to win the Olympics. I want to make the Olympic team. I want to win the Olympics. And this is somebody who had quite a bit of athletic talent. And I said, well, I recommended several places where that person could train. And they went and trained somewhere else that wasn't any of those. And I said, why did you pick that place? Because they didn't have any real record of success. I mean, maybe they would have had a reason because that person is really good, focusing on standing technique, and that's my weakness or whatever. But no, the reason was, well, I had a friend there that I could crash with, and, they were nice, the coach was a nice person, and so on. If your most important thing, you really want to win the Olympics, and then you go to where you can get the best at judo, not where my friends are there. It's, I can get a job there. And I had the same argument with a friend of mine who one of her friends was staying at this place, and she said, well, USA Judo is so mean to him. They won't let him leave. And I said, they won't let him leave? Do they have like police at the door, armed guards leaving him, stopping him? Because I will call, the Department of Homeland Security myself. No, they won't let him go under the conditions he wants to give and give him a stipend, do that. If you need to quit that job, if you need to move somewhere else to get better, if you know that you need to go to graduate school, and then you don't do it, that's another mindset I don't quite get. But the world is full of people who really do know what they need to do. But my only conclusion is they don't really want to win the Olympics. They don't really want to found a company. What they mean is, gee, I wish I could quit my job and start a company like you. What they mean is, I wish I could do that if it wasn't too much trouble, if it wasn't too much work.
Yeah, basically, that is the exact mindset. They see the work, they see it becomes overwhelming, fear sets in, and then they just procrastinate. And how do you stop doing that? I think the first thing in the morning idea is probably one of the best things you can do. Most people just wake up in the morning, alarm goes off, they start just say something negative to themselves. So they're behind. They're behind the competition automatically, where you're doing something to propel yourself forward. And maybe that little change for somebody out there that's stuck in a rut will help propel them to live a more, maybe just happy year or more successful year.
Well, here's the smartest thing about math, I think, and I think it's true of everything. One of our lead cultural consultants, Dr. Eric Longy, said this when he was talking about working with children in schools on American Indian reservations, and some of the kids are a few years behind. He said, just because they don't get it the first time doesn't mean they can't get it. And it's funny because I was talking to one of the interns in our office today who had just taken, I think, discrete linear mathematics. And he said the same thing, that he didn't get an A in the class, which he wanted to, but he said, I'm still studying because I know that I can completely understand this. I know I can master this. And if you look at people who are very successful in math, if you look at people who are very successful programmers in software development, I think that's the big thing. There's this myth that, there's this magical math brain that people have, or, you write code because you're so... The big thing is that conviction that even if you don't get it the first time, that you will get it. That's why they call it hacking, that you're just kind of hacking away at this thing until it works. And the same is true of sports. Rhonda, me, I guess not so much my daughter Julie because she's quite young yet, but even in her case in soccer, as she moves up, there are people who were better when we were younger, and then we kept training more and passed those people up. And Julie asked me, Mom, are you sure that always works? I said, I am 100% sure it always works. Now, if the person's quite talented, and maybe they're more talented than you, it may take you longer to catch them. But you will catch them. In the end, you will always catch them.
I definitely concur with that. You need to. It is weird though how, especially in MMA, a lot of the people that are in the top wrestling category, the world champions, the USA champions, it's not those guys that are doing really well. It's the guys that were a couple rows behind, but when they hit MMA, they actually start being able to outpace everybody. So it's that work mentality. I really, really think you're the best ever. We're going to be following everything you do. We're going to be donating. We're going to be pushing donations. We wish the family.
Well, and you don't have to just donate it. You can buy it yourself. And
I'm going to buy the game.
We will be having Fish Lake, which is super cool. So here's the thing. Spirit Lake, we were funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, of all places, because they were concerned about the academics in some very remote communities. And so we had tight deadlines to get the games out. So at every point, we're constantly going back and making improvements. And then the next game is, I would say, 3 times as good as the first one we did. So everybody that buys this they'll get a little coupon in their email next month to get half off in the next game. So it's really, really cool.
Well, I would like to set up some type of donation system where I could become one of the characters in the game.
Well, you know what? I don't know. You better start saving your pennies then.
I want to.
We did a Kickstarter campaign.
Okay.
Last February, I think it was. And one of the prizes they put in there was to buy to be a character in the game. And the Kickstarter people said, well, you should always put in those higher level. I think it was $2,500, but don't quote me on that. So we put that in there thinking who would actually buy to be a character in the game. There are actually 2 people that did. One of them, Derek Landy, who writes the Skullduggery Pleasant books. They're really actually fun books. And I'm sure he sold millions of copies of his books, and he bought it and then had a contest for his readers on who had the best reason for being in the game. And then this little girl who's like 6 years old named Willow won it. So she's a character in Fish Lake. Yeah.
A really generous thing to do. And I'm trying to put myself in a game.
And then Rhonda bought a character because she had forgotten her niece Ava's birthday. And on top of that, she's Ava's godmother. So she was really trying to dig herself out of that hole.
Well, she permanently put her in a video game, so I think it's a pretty good present.
I was surprised we didn't get any revenge ones because Hart Fisher, we had an ad for the Kickstarter campaign, ran on the American Horrors Channel. He's like, do you want to get back at your ex? Make him be a dead bear.
Make them, they'll kill that other tribe person.
Yes.
That's really, really cool. So I want to thank you again, and I don't know what else to say. I can't really thank you enough. We will be following every step you take, every step.
That's a little stalkerish,
Every step you take, we'll be watching you via the NSA. And I'm applying all the principles, and I see how the parallels from your judo to teaching, which you see the greatness in judo, you see how those principles apply, then you just translate that over to teaching children mathematics. Obviously, in judo, it's a little more fun. You move around. It helps stimulate the thought process, and the video game, I think, also helps stimulate the thought process. You move around. It's more interactive, and the way you raise children, and so on. I can't thank you enough. I want to thank you a million times over.
Aww.
We'll get this cut up and get it out before probably for Christmas. So maybe your mom could watch it for Christmas.
Yeah, get out before Christmas and tell people that's what your mom wants for Christmas. Because like Ron said, your mom's a grown woman. She wanted something. She bought it, right? So you could sponsor a classroom or a school in her name, and she would like that.
That's a beautiful idea. So, Doctor.
I would like it.
Well, we're going to be thinking of a couple different ideas. So I'm going to sponsor in your mom's name.
Oh, that is so cool.
I'm really going to win her
Her
over.
name is Marcella.
Marcella.
Yes.
And does she live in California?
She's in Florida.
Florida.
This is where everyone in the world retires to. It's like a law. Once you turn over 70, you have to move to Florida.
That's what they say, but it's pretty nice now. And have you visited lately?
I went to visit my mom, and I went to church with her because we're very Catholic. But I swear I was probably one of the youngest people in the church.
I don't think that's too far. I mean, it is.
It was in Florida.
There's sections, but they're building big fight camps out there in some sections.
Yeah.
That way you can't get in trouble.
Yeah, it's not by where my mom lives.
Yeah. Nobody's going out late. The fighters are playing bingo on Friday. They're taking care of themselves. All right, Doc. I want to let you go. Enjoy the rest of your night or afternoon there. And peace be with you.
All right. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Hey, bye-bye.
Bye.